Happy International Women's Day from Newcastle University. I'm Anamika.
And my name is Rosanna.
We are so excited to be a part of Global Pop Newsroom even this year as well. So, coming up today, we have got a list of interviews with many inspirational women who have worked in different fields and have got different experiences and challenges and many insights to share with us. So, our first two reports take us down to the seaside.
Yes, 2 days ago, I had the pleasure of going down to Cullercoats Beach, which is a beach very close to where we are now, to speak to a volunteer for the RNLI, which is our national lifeboat rescue service. And so I spoke to Sarah Whitelaw, who is a volunteer for the RNLI, and she was amongst the first all-female crew for the Cullercoats RNLI.
This year, the RNLI are celebrating their 200-year anniversary. There are currently just under 6,000 lifeboat crew volunteers in the UK, but only 12% of them are women. For this year's International Women's Day, we spoke to Sarah Whitelaw, who was part of the first all-female RNLI crew just over a year ago here at Cullercoats Beach.
So the theme for International Women's Day this year is Inspire Inclusion. So I'm wondering what inspired you to join the RNLI as a volunteer?
So I work in marine management, so I work for the civil service, and I do work at sea as part of my role. So I have kind of a few relevant skills that I hope to be able to bring, but most of everything that you know is sort of taught here. But I just have a love for the sea, a passion for working at sea. I understand some of the risks around working at sea based on the job that I do, but I live close by and I wanted to be able to help if I could. I know that the RNLI do a fantastic job, fully supportive of the charity, and when there was an opportunity to be able to share any of the skills that I had and to learn new ones for the benefit of the organisation, that's what I wanted to do.
Amazing. And so why do you think that there are less women volunteering for the RNLI? What kind of barriers do you think are in place that are preventing women from sort of approaching those roles?
I think sometimes it's a perception that you need to have seagoing experience, that you need to have maritime background. I think the assumption that it'll be all male dominated on station, and again that's not the case. There's plenty of women here, and I think maybe the assumption that you have to have a lot of physical strength, and you don't, because there are so many other skills that you can bring.
Yeah. So off the back of that, how do you think that we can encourage more women to volunteer for the RNLI?
I think encouraging people to come down and speak to us. We have open days, we have fundraising days. Our Harbour Day is a big fundraising day in the summer. 20th of July this year we'll have our Harbour Day, which is we open up the station, people can see the boat, can meet the crew.
Looking back to December 2022, how did it feel to be part of the first all-female crew for RNLI Cullercoats?
It was fantastic. It was really good to share with the rest of the crew. It was good to kind of be involved with that. I was brand new to the crew at the time, so it felt like a really kind of welcoming and really positive kind of environment to be part of. And I think it's part of making history, and I think it was a real good opportunity.
And with the 200-year anniversary this year, where do you see the future of women's role within the RNLI?
Again, there's so many opportunities. I think remembering, like I say, that it's not all about rescuing people, it's not all about being on the boat, it's not all about pulling people out of the water. There's so many ways that you can develop your skills at the RNLI. There's definitely a role for you on the boat crew as well, if women want to be involved in it. You can learn all the skills that you need in being involved with the crew, being involved with the station, and being able to be part of a team that saves lives at sea.
Oh, so that looked a bit chilly there.
Yeah,
So
it was.
I just hope, apart from the interview, there is so many things we talked to the interviewee. So I think there must be many more things you want to share. Is there any?
Yeah, so obviously the interview was only 3 minutes long. Well, the video was only 3 minutes long, but the actual interview and the conversation we had was a lot longer than that. And it was really interesting. And, you know, she spoke a lot about encouraging women to volunteer for the RNLI. She really explained how there is a false perception that it's male dominated and that you need physical strength or you need marine experience, whereas that's not the case. Because currently in the whole of the UK, a very small percentage of the volunteers are women. And so she really wants to drive up that percentage. And she explained to me that there's so many different roles in the RNLI. It's not just about going on the boat. There's so much behind the scenes, and that actually everyone has skills to offer. So it was really fascinating to get that insight from her. And she hopes that, you know, by doing this, she will encourage more women to volunteer.
Yeah, hopefully. Okay, so like staying in the water now, we're next moving to our next report that is by Caroline, who interviewed the founder of a local women's swimming crew, a particular group who have more than 100 members, and those people have kind of changed many lives. So let's see the video.
I couldn't recommend open water swimming enough to everyone. Find a group. Everybody who I speak to, whether they're part of this group or not, encourages women and men to come in and do it. It's just amazing.
To be part of this community is the way I do it. Just gives you so much ability and enjoyment and encouragement of others and support.
The best part about it is that nobody worries about what they look like. We're all shapes and sizes and we all laugh together, and it's this wonderful camaraderie and love of each other.
The leader of our little group is Helen. She is the one who has empowered me to have more confidence in myself, believe in myself, and she's always encouraging you to be the best you can be.
So hi, I'm Helen. I started this group at the beginning of lockdown because I wanted to swim and I knew it wasn't safe to swim on your own. So every time anyone showed an interest, I said, oh, could you come swimming with me? So I took everybody's number, and in time I had quite a big group. We're called the Californians. There's 156 people get the times every week. There's about 30 who come relatively regularly. Why swimming? Well, initially that really scared me. So at first I didn't take my feet off the ground ever. I just sort of stayed in the shallows, and then I was swimming quite far out in the end, you know, in very deep water, as I built more confidence to do it. And just that sense of freedom and of being away from everything and just looking out to sea is great. In this community, I do feel that we help each other and we support each other and we are empowered. I feel like we really build, you know, a few of us used to turn up kind of going, oh, my body doesn't look good, oh, what are people going to think? And now we walk in going, nah, who cares?
It has actually changed my life completely, being a part of this group. I'm postmenopausal, post-cancer, I've been through the mill, and it is honestly the best feeling that I could ever have to know that I am part of this.
This community of swimmers has talked me through a whole load of mental health issues and to be confident in myself. They've just made me realise that I am me and I'm special.
By going into the sea and swimming, I was back as a child. I was back in my happy time, and it lifted my mood. It really helped during COVID.
Just makes you feel happy all the time, and we just laugh all the time, and we have so much to talk about, and it just brings so much joy to your life. It makes your body feel alive, really. It makes you feel alive.
It doesn't matter whether you're brain box of the year, whether you're an academic, whether you're a housewife, whether you're retired. The conversations we have go from bra and knickers to philosophy, and we include everybody, no matter what age they are, no matter what race they are, no matter what disability they've got, how mad we all are.
Being with other women, I think, is the most important thing in our lives, is to have girlfriends, women that we can talk to. And these women They are my best buddies.
You learn so much about yourself and about women from being in a group of women. And you always have a different perspective to your own. And I think that's really good.
Amazing. That was really interesting to hear from all those different women who have found a love for swimming in the sea with this new group. Taking a slightly different angle now to women in sports, we step into the football ground of knowledge with Vicky Sparks, a successful sports commentator from the BBC.
On the occasion of Women's Day, we got a privilege to talk to Vicky Sparks, a trailblazing journalist and a BBC commentator who is known for breaking barriers in the world of football broadcasting.
I think it's so important to celebrate all of humanity, everybody on this earth. And we know we have an International Men's Day and we have an International Women's Day, and so I think it is a great opportunity on this day in particular to celebrate all of the women in our lives that are important to us, whether that's on a personal level or a professional level, the women that inspire us, that nurture us, and that are huge parts of who we as women are today. I knew I wanted to be a journalist from when I was quite young, but I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go into political journalism or sports journalism. And as the years went on, a friend actually gave me Andrew Marr, the excellent British political journalist book when I was 16. And I loved reading it and it was great. But it also made me think, he knows the last 40 years of British politics like the back of his hand. And what actually do I know that well? And the answer was football. So I thought, actually, maybe football is a good direction to go.
In recent decades, women have transcended all stereotypes, emerging as powerful equals. Vicky enthusiastically embraces the societal evolution and has many things to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, it has massively, massively increased, which is so exciting. I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, there wasn't anywhere to watch women's football on the television or hear it on the radio. So it's amazing to see, certainly in the UK, the accessibility that people get now to that. Big deals broadcast wise with the BBC and with Sky, and for radio as well, BBC Radio 5 Live and TalkSport. More broadly, I think it's brilliant to see the accessibility and the interest in women's sport. I mean, the numbers that BBC television got for the Women's Euros final and the Women's World Cup final in recent years, we're pushing into the 10 millions and up towards the 20 millions, and it's just things that you never would have seen happen even a few years ago in women's football. Arsenal selling out the Emirates regularly when their women's side play there, around 60,000 people on a regular basis now going to see them, and I think it's going from strength to strength. I think fundamentally for anybody that wants to get into sports journalism, I would say the only prerequisite is that you love the sport that you want to cover. Nothing else should be a barrier whatsoever. That is the only thing that matters. So I would say hard work is the first thing. Practice at home. If it's written, write articles, write blogs, put them up online. Even if nobody reads them, you're practicing your ability to communicate and tell a story to an audience. Practice. If you enjoy presenting, start something on YouTube. Yeah, again, even if no one watches it, that doesn't matter. That's not the point. If it goes viral, brilliant, great. You've got a platform, but it's all about honing your own skills. Love the sport as well. Like, push into your passion. And I think that will come across in the work you do. And get in touch with as many people as you can and as many publications or broadcasters as you can. Just try and get some work experience. It's a great way to get a foot in the door.
Okay, so that was quite insightful, and the information she shared and the advice she shared with the people, like the women who wants to go into and pursue like sports media, I hope that'll help. And for me particularly, I do wanted to go into that career. So like not in football particularly, but cricket. So we'll surely look into it, advice. Okay, so moving ahead. So like sticking to the theme media, next video, like next interview, we have of two exceptional women who have done pretty good in media industry. We have Karen Ross, the first UK chair of gender and media, and Claire Hathwan, a broadcast journalist who has been in this industry for like a decade and has been switching networks.
In exploring the role and influence of women today, we have found journalism to be an area of challenge and opportunities. Progress on gender equality is complex and slow. Next, we turn to Karen Rose, an expert in media and gender studies, to share her insights.
I think that we have had decades, we've had more than 50 years of equality legislation, and yet we still see very, very, very few women in senior positions. So the legislation doesn't tend to work as a deterrent, because many women who take their employer to an industrial tribunal on the grounds of sexism and discrimination. So I think what has to happen is that there has to be a financial reason to put more women into these positions, and that financial reason I think is more kind of compelling now because of the rise of social media. That is making a difference, is actually seeing women do really well in social media organizations, and for mainstream media to already know that they're losing audience to social media, and therefore they will have to do something different. And you need to have really positive examples. So you have someone like Catherine Viner, who's the editor-in-chief at The Guardian. Well, not, The Guardian hasn't fallen over. The Guardian, is still, a respectable newspaper, even with a woman at the top. So I think that the more that we see women in role models, women as role models in senior positions, that I think will be really helpful.
However, the reality is often challenging. Then we hear from Claire, who worked in the BBC and shares the double stand for women in the news industry.
So my name is Claire Hawthorne and I am a broadcast journalist, and I've spent 10 years in the industry as a reporter and a newsreader and a producer. So the news industry is very fast-paced, it's very difficult to predict what will happen when and where you'll need to be. So even though there are shifts in broadcasting news anyway, there are shifts that you would work. Often if a story breaks, you have to just go and that's it. So once you have children or a family to look after, that becomes more difficult if you've got to be at a certain time to pick them up and you've got a story that's breaking. When you're younger, it's a lot easier to be places that you can be whenever you want to be. But I would say that is definitely a shift that men, from my experience, don't really have the same problems. I think women need to be confident in their skills, recognise when they're doing well and recognise what the company's getting from them and how much that is worth, and keep going, don't be deterred. And I think in the early stages you will have to do a lot, it will be tiring and you should reap the rewards later, but do not keep doing that forever.
We now have Claire with us in the studio today to talk a little bit further about her experience. Hi Claire, thank you so much for coming in today and happy International Women's Day to you.
Happy International Women's Day to you as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So in the video, you touched on how having children affects your career. Could you elaborate on how becoming a mother has impacted your career in broadcasting, and if there are any particular difficulties that you face as a woman with a family?
Yeah, in my experience, for most of the mothers in broadcasting that I come across generally work freelance. And that's because I do think that there's a bit of an opinion still within the broadcasting industry that women with children are more difficult or might have to not always be available. So the thing about broadcast journalism, particularly when you start out, which is usually reporting, is you have to be able to just go at the drop of a hat. And even though there are shifts, they don't always end at the right time. But actually, what you tend to find is that working women who are also mothers are some of the most organized people you will ever come across because of so many things that we have to juggle. It's not, well, again, I don't want to generalize here, but a lot of the time, men in broadcasting don't really have the same issues. They can go back to work. They often will have somebody at home who can look after the kids. For example, I was a single parent when I started out, and in radio, you always start on the early shifts. So I was working 6 a.m. shifts. So that is tricky when you've got children at home. You can't leave them at home asleep at 5 in the morning. So I would have to have family members come and stay over the night before, get up. I would do, you also, when you're starting out, kind of have to get as much experience as you can. So I was having my parents stay over on the nights that I had shifts so that they could be there in the morning. When my daughter woke up, I'd be out at 4:30, 5 o'clock, go to the radio station, do a 6 till 10 shift, then I drive across to another city and then go and work freelancing for as a video journalist, 11 till 7 at night, and then go back home. So I needed the support of my family. Also as well, it's definitely something that there is still a lot of issues, and this isn't just with women, this is generally across the board with getting into journalism, is there are some criteria that you have to have, which does make it difficult for a lot of people. For example, you have to be able to drive usually. I've known reporters who don't drive, and there's always, they always come up against problems with editors who get frustrated that they have to get a bus or a train, and that's expensive. You generally have to do some sort of work for free usually. And again, you have to be able to afford to do that. So as a single parent, that was very tricky for me. And I have worked in different companies, and different companies do treat it differently. Some were better than others in being understanding about childcare and things like that. But as I say, I think the fact that the majority of mothers that I know work freelance tells you that it's not necessarily set up. I think there's much further to go for it to be more supportive for women with kids.
Okay, so like, are there any changes that you would like to see in future, like that will enable a better work-life balance for like both men and women?
Well, yeah, so there is a tendency, and I don't like it at the moment, for companies to be hiring as many younger people as possible who they kind of expect to just work and work and work and work and work, and they're not, and sort of not to stick up for themselves and say, I don't want to work. I finished at 11 o'clock last night. I don't want to be in at 6 in the morning. And some places are good. So some places definitely have, if you're on an early shift, you don't do a late shift the night before. Other places don't at all. So there does definitely need to be, journalism is full of adrenaline. It's exciting and you do keep going, but also there's a lot of burnout, especially in newsreaders and stuff like that, because it's just relentless. It's just, as soon as the story breaks, the news still has to happen. So you can't all just go and take a break. It's got to be covered. Better pay, absolutely needs to be better pay. There needs to be more incentive to keep journalists, and that there is the work-life balance so that everybody doesn't leave and go to PR for better quality of life. That's why most people leave. They go to a PR job which pays them well, has better working hours, and is more understanding.
Also, like, are there any more challenges that you faced as a woman?
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely as a woman, when I've had to cover sports stories, I've had to go to press conferences. Then sometimes as well with political issues. I remember going and talking about the Irish backstop, asking people on the street doing vox pops, and I was really patronized by a man asking me if I knew what it was and stuff like this. So yes, but also I would say that there are an awful lot of women. I would say in news, it's quite a female-dominated industry up to a certain point. But I do think there is a glass ceiling, and a lot of the women don't progress above that. Above that level, it then becomes mostly men or women without kids. Because the other thing is, a lot of it is dependent on where you can work. So for example, I could, if I were free to move to London, I could have a much faster progressing career than I could have having to stay here because I have a family.
Well, as aspiring journalists ourselves, we're hoping that within our lifetimes, that gender gap will be as small as possible for us. Claire, thank you so much for speaking to us today, and we wish you all the best with the rest of your career.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Coming up now, we'll be hearing from two exceptional women in leadership roles, but in different fields. Before starting, Rosanna, do you know that the Bishop of Newcastle University, like Newcastle, is a woman?
No, I didn't know that
Oh,
actually.
yeah, that's the same for me. I just heard about it recently.
Yeah.
So now let's hear from the Bishop of Newcastle University, that is Helen Ann Hartley. She'll be talking about her experiences in personal and her professional life, like how encouraging yet disappointing her journey was. So let's get into the interview.
Nowadays, more and more female enter into the field that was dominated by male and break the gender stereotype. However, it still faces many difficulties. Here we get female bishop in Newcastle, Helen Ann. She's going to show her experience and opinions for the upcoming International Women's Day.
So my name is Helen Ann Hartley and I'm the Bishop of Newcastle, and also with my role I am a member of the House of Lords, which is the second chamber in the Parliament in Westminster, so I have a responsibility in that context too. For the first time women were able to be ordained priests. That's 30 years ago, and 10 years ago I myself became a bishop, though not in England because I became a bishop in New Zealand, but actually the first woman who became a bishop in England. She will reach that 10-year mark next year. And certainly outside the church people are very warm and welcoming, and then inside the church too, but I think on the whole I've experienced only really positive things. I don't agree with it. So I do work alongside people quite a lot of the time. I think that where I find it challenging in the Church of England is that there are some people who think women shouldn't be in ordained leadership because for Christians we have the model of Jesus, who had 12 disciples and they were all men, so it's wrong to have women. So that's one argument. The other argument that I have more struggle with, I think, is in the New Testament there's an image of the man as the head of the woman, therefore the woman should not be in a position of authority over the man. I have a bit more of a problem with that theologically. So from a faith perspective I would say that, you know, we're not in the time of the New Testament and context is different, and we need to read biblical passages particularly in context and be careful with that. So but you know, at the end of the day I think people do hold different views, and as I said, it's really more of their issue than it is mine, and I just really work hard to be the best leader that I can be, to model something that they can actually look at and see, well, okay, she's doing a good job, therefore maybe they'll change their mind.
As a woman in such high position, Helen Ann's achievement is inspiring. However, she still suffers from gender discrimination being a woman.
For example, recently I was in a public situation, and an older gentleman said to me that he remembered who I was because he liked my hairstyle. and I sort of thought, oh, you know, come on, it's 2024. Is that really, would you have said that if I had been a man? And I'm not so sure. And I think in many ways it's a generational thing. So I'm quite patient with people, and you know, and I don't get too worked up. But I think if I saw that happening maybe to a younger woman, then I probably would say something or encourage that woman to speak out, because I think discrimination still exists. But the more we have women in roles like this in public life, then the more normal it becomes.
In the end, Helen Ann encourages more women to break the gender stereotype.
I'd say be bold, be courageous, be confident in who you are. You don't have to be like anybody else. You can aspire to be like somebody who you really admire, and that's the best that you can be, and be confident with that. The most important thing I think I can say is to be courageous.
That was a really insightful interview. Thank you so much to Helen Ann, the Bishop of Newcastle. It's such a shame that she still in 2024 has to face those barriers because of her gender, but hopefully we are moving in the right direction. And lastly, one of our reporters spoke to Sarah Monroe, who is the director of the Baltic Centre for Contemporary Arts. She reflects on her experience and discusses the struggles faced by women in leadership and in the arts industry.
How did you find that the start of your position in the Baltic as a first female director? How you find the start?
That's a good question. So I suppose for me, it was not something I'd really thought about before, but it's one of those ones that when I got the job, it seemed to become quite a big part of the story, that it was the first woman that had done it. And I suppose what that makes you do is maybe think about, well, more overtly. So actually, what does it mean? What is the difference that I'm a woman? Or will that make any difference? Or actually, what are the values that might reside in that? And certainly one of the things I think for me when I got here was there was quite a hierarchical, it was quite a particular type of culture, and not how I think you get the best out of people and the most creative way of working, and that sort of building more empathy. So I'm always never sure whether that's directly because you're a woman or because of what your values are. But it was interesting how many other people commented on it.
You say it might be a challenge for you as well to kind of start to establish that.
Yeah, I think it's very different now than it used to be. So I think if I think back to when I first started working in the arts and I looked at the whole sector and these people in very high jobs that you would never be able to do or get to, and actually there was often people have asked me, who was your role model? What were the women you had as role models? And I can't think of any that were in my sector. So I suppose for me, one of the things I've often thought about is that actually I've always enjoyed mentoring, and I get a lot of thrill out of enabling other young women into, and I think it's partly because I didn't see that, and I didn't find that there was a lot of women that were the women that were there tended to maybe not be quite so inclusive, some of them, or I hadn't found.
Do you see the work of women artists as equally validated in the world of arts, or this difference doesn't affect that much?
Yeah, no, I still think there are issues over the women and women. It has changed dramatically. There has been a big leap, definitely, over the last sort of 15 to 20 years. There's been quite a big shift in the ability of women artists to be represented, to gain visibility, to get supported. But I still think there are many traditional challenges which affect women in any area, and often as artists. And often you'll have an artist that is a woman artist who's doing quite well, then the children come along, and somehow you don't see any art from that artist for about another 10 years. And I think we don't, as societies, we still don't have proper childcare. Affordable childcare, affordable housing would make probably a bigger difference for artists, women artists, than actually anything the art sector can do. Because I think it's relatively, I think a lot of, I haven't done any tests on this recently, but we know the balance here is very, very balanced now between male, female artists, for example, but I don't think society is balanced outside of the cultural institution. So I think the conditions for those artists are still often harder.
So, Anamika, you were there for the interview with Sarah.
Yeah.
Could you go into a bit more detail about the insights that she gave you?
Oh, yeah, sure. So it was my first time in Baltic Gallery, and it was an exceptional experience. It was so beautiful. And have you been there?
Yeah, I've been a few times. I love it.
Have you seen the floors?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like, I remember it was, I guess, she shared it, and I have gone through many articles. She shared it that in 2018, exactly on the Women's Day, she basically, they had a big it was an event organized where all the 3 floors were filled with arts of women, just to empower women. So that's something they do, and her particularly has gone through so much. Like, she has gotten great experience in that, and she even shared many stories. So it was quite good to know how, like, she as a personality herself empowers women a lot. So when you'll go into her office and see, it's like a proper balance there of men and women. So it was a pretty good experience.
Yeah, amazing. I love the Baltic Art Gallery. It's so beautiful, and the viewing platform on the top floor is truly incredible. You get the view of the quay side.
And even from the video, as you saw, like, her office has the beautiful view. So she herself said that she has got the best office there, and I would agree totally. It was beautiful.
Amazing. So that's all of our interviews for today. We hope you've enjoyed them and found them interesting, insightful. We hope you have learned something new. And that's it from us at Newcastle University. I've been Rosanna.
And I'm Anamika for you. Thank you so much for joining in.
And
happy Women's Day.
Happy Women's Day. Happy International Women's Day.
Bye.